Welcome to the Game of Her Own podcast, a podcast about women who work in sports. I'm your host, Jahaan Blake. After 15 years of working for 3 major league teams, including the Boston Red Sox, Los Angeles Dodgers, and the Chicago Cubs, I discovered the one thing I loved the most was helping women in sports shatter glass ceilings and take their seat at the table. I loved it so much that I made a business out of it. I have the honor of coaching high-performing women in the sports and entertainment industry and supporting them as they go after exactly what they want in their career. So if you are feeling tired of waiting on the sidelines, done being overlooked for promotions, and you're ready to pull ahead of the pack and take your career to the next level, girl, I'm here for it. I also created the Game of Her Own podcast to support you as well. We are here to share the stories of incredible women who work in sports and entertainment. These leaders and trailblazers will inspire you with their success and the lessons they've learned along the way to the top. Ladies, there is nothing like women empowering women. I am so honored you're here. Be honest with yourself. Would you accept a role that you knew you had to grow into, one that was really going to stretch you? Or would you wait until you felt like you were 100% ready? My next guest was faced with that exact situation. Listen in as I chat with 3-time Emmy Award winner and senior sports producer, Heather McDonough. Make sure you listen in for the reasons she left MLB Network, what happened when her boss left and she had this opportunity to step into a bigger role, and why she doesn't believe women only belong on the sidelines. And definitely listen in for a special guest appearance and what that guest wanted. Spoiler alert, it may or may not have had to do with donuts. All right, ladies, let's dive in. Heather, welcome to the Game of Her Own podcast. I am so excited that you're here.
I am really excited to be here. Thank you for having me and inviting me on.
Yes, so I can't wait to dig into everything you do because it's very unique and you are definitely the first. I'm not going to give away what you do right now, but the first of your kind on this show. So this is going to be really cool to dig in. But before we get there, tell us a little bit about when sports became, like when you fell in love with sports and when it became like an important part of your life.
It's funny. It always has been. And I think you can relate to this knowing, your Jersey upbringing too, like in New York and New Jersey, and it's funny. I don't think I have a New York, New Jersey accent anymore. And then I listen back as I'm doing a lot of these Zooms and interviews now. And I'm like, oh, it's still there. So no matter how long I've been in the state of Maryland and the DC area, I definitely still have it.
I can definitely hear it. Like you remind me of home.
Oh, good. But growing up, like it's such a big thing, obviously. Like the Yankees, the Mets, the Jets, the Giants, just everything. And it was always like a part of it. I'm an only child. So, it wasn't like I had brothers and things like that. My dad just would always be looking at like the paper and the box score. And I think I kind of followed along. I have some like theory that I was watching Saved by the Bell a lot and like NBA Inside Stuff was on right after. And then they went into like the national NBC game of the week. It was half the time it was the Bulls and the Knicks and, things like that. So I always just kind of liked it. I mean, I think A League of Their Own, when that came out in like 92 or whenever that was, when I was like, I was 10 at that point. So I think I really enjoyed like that movie. And I don't know, sports was just always a part of my life and around. And, once I got to college and I realized that I could kind of focus in on that. And I worked at like the student radio station, like calling the games. I remember walking in at Maryland and we went into the radio station, a friend of mine and I, and we didn't even know what we were going in for. It was like an open house. And then I didn't even know they had a sports, department. And then I realized they did. And that was something I wanted to get involved in. So it just always kind of has been there, especially as a woman. I never thought it was like super weird. I knew it was a male dominated industry and obviously sports leagues and then all the people that cover them, but it was never really, I guess, like a thing. I just never thought, I just always liked sports.
Wow. So you were calling games. Tell us more about that.
Yeah. So like it's funny because the student radio station at the University of Maryland, especially the sports part, has like blown up in the last, 10 years. So like when we were there, it first got on the internet when Ray makes us sound ancient. Like it first got on the internet. So like my sophomore or junior year. And so I would like call, in the beginning, it was like women's soccer and women's lacrosse. Eventually, like I worked my way up to like senior year to like men's basketball and football, doing like the sidelines and stuff. I kind of knew what I was doing. I kind of didn't, but it was fun and I enjoyed it. But the thing with the internet was like, so you'd have a lot of these women's lacrosse players were from Australia at Maryland. There were a few of them. And they'd be like, oh, my mom listens to you in Australia, which was kind of neat. So that was a great experience. There were only, like 10 of us in the, Maddie? No. Yes. And this is working from home, right? I got my daughter here. This is COVID. So, okay, quick. And then say hello.
Hi, Jahaan. Hi, nice to meet you.
Real life right here, folks. This is real life. Okay? Yes, we're doing a podcast. You know what podcasts are. Your dad works on podcasts.
Is it just you and Jahaan, or is it just someone?
Yes, it's me and Jahaan. And
no one else?
All the people who are eventually going to listen to it.
No one else?
But right now, it's just us.
Is anybody else going to log on?
The idea is for that, yes.
Did you get a donut for me?
No matter like how important it is, and you're like, just, can you go?
Oh my God, can I get a donut?
I know. I brought you bring home a donut once, and then you think you're going to bring home a donut every day.
Yep.
I just love Mom donuts.
And so back to college, when I wasn't thinking of having two kids and, things like that nature, right? Who was thinking of that in college? So I did all that. And it was cool. Like I went to, we got to travel. It was our own like money and some funding that, we get like a minimal funding from the school. But I went to like the Peach Bowl, the Gator Bowl. I went to the NCAA tournament my senior year. It was a lot of good, nice, wonderful experiences, getting to not only, call the games, but also get to travel and go to these awesome environments. And it was when Maryland was in the ACC. So a lot of those schools.
That's an incredible experience.
Yeah, no, it was great. I mean, it was definitely added to the college experience for sure. Like I didn't study abroad or anything, but I got to go to, Chapel Hill, North Carolina and Durham. Although we didn't get to broadcast from inside Duke. We only we got to do the football games there because like student radio, like we were like nobody is. So, but no, we got to do a lot of cool things and meet other people and just in college. And now that radio station, we started to do talk shows but now like they've got all these, web talk shows. They've got people writing articles too. They've, I think got like at least like 50 kids working on this site. And back then it was just like 10 of us. So it's nice to see how it's grown. And it's grown at the school too. There's a whole thing program for sports media. So it's definitely grown over the years. And there are a lot of women in there too. It's not just the guys.
Yes. I know that. I feel like all of those things have grown like tremendously. Now you look back, you're like, it was not like that when
not even like 15, 20 years ago. It's incredible how that industry has grown.
Yeah. Like I had a young woman, she was on and she created the sports management program at her school. Like,
oh, wow.
It didn't exist when she was there. And she's not that old. And I was like, oh, that's incredible. Okay, so tell everybody what you do and who you do it for.
I am the senior sports producer at NBC4 in DC. So that's the local NBC station that we have our newscasts, in the morning, afternoon, evening. It does get confused sometimes with NBC4 Washington, which is a regional sports network like others around the country in Boston and Chicago. And they're the ones that like air the Caps games, air the Wizards games. And they have like a big digital presence too. But this is the local news you watch at 6 o'clock and 11 o'clock. I'm in charge of the sports team there, creating content for our news programs and, specials and things. But yeah, running the local sports department for the local NBC station.
How did you even get there? How did you know that this is what you wanted to do?
Yeah,
I think incredible job. And you've had some like really cool accolades, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But how did you make that choice to get into this?
I think I just, always knew, like once I was in college studying journalism and working on sports, that I knew that was what I wanted to do. I think like a lot of people, initially I wanted to be on air. And then you kind of realize that there's other, things, other paths that you can take in the industry. After college, I didn't have a job for a couple months. So I was back home in New Jersey. And then I got a call from the Fox station down here needing some help on the assignment desk, which is the group that sends out the reporters and photographers to cover different stories, gets all the information from the local police departments or, about local events happening. So they're kind of like the eyes and ears of a newsroom. I had interned at the Fox affiliate in the sports department at the same place like 2 summers earlier. And I guess, I made a good impression like as a hard worker and did a good job. And that was in sports, but they needed help in news and also somebody to like work the overnight assignment desk and also run the teleprompter, print out the scripts for the anchors. So like very entry level kind of news department stuff. So, but that was a foot in the door. So I came back down to DC and I was there for about 1.5 years at the Fox. And then an opening came about at NBC4 Washington, actually used to be Comcast Sportsnet back in the day, on their assignment desks, but that was all sports. So that was coordinating what games, what practices, things like that. So I ended up going over there because that was sports. That's what I wanted to do. And then I was there for 3 years. That was like 2006 to 2009. That's also where I met my husband, and he worked over there as well, and he's still there. And then I ended up going to MLB Network from there. They had just started up in Secaucus, New Jersey, and baseball. I love baseball, that and college basketball are my favorite sports. And so it seemed like a no-brainer to go up there. And this new network, a sport I loved. It was also on the assignment desk, and it was a good experience. I met a lot of, great people and good contacts, but that fit the desk up there, the assignment desk at the time too, and maybe it's evolved since then. It just wasn't, I didn't feel like as involved as some of the other people working there, the producers, the anchors, some of the editors, the folks writing and cutting the highlights. Like I was just kind of coordinating, and I didn't feel like I was as involved as I wanted to be. So a job came open down here back in DC at the Fox. So I was at the Fox 3 different times as an intern with news and then as a sports producer. And it was my old sports anchor, Dave Feldman, and he had a job opening. And I said, I had never been a producer before. I had cut highlights when I was even at NBC4 Washington, like on the assignment desk, or when I was at MLB Network and I came back during the off season to freelance. I would cut highlights, write highlights. So I'd done that kind of stuff, but I had never been like an actual sports producer in the control room, timing out the show. But he's like, I know you're smart. I know you're going to do a good job. Come down. I don't think it wasn't a full-time job, but it was back in DC where my husband was at that point too, or he was still my boyfriend at that point. And I just wasn't that happy with my role at MLB Network. So I came down and, there were some bumps. I was learning how to produce kind of on the fly. There were, again, ups, downs, but overall, like I knew that's what I wanted to be doing. And so a year later, another job opened up at the NBC here. And they've had a, long history of being like a great sports department. It's where George Michael did the Sports Machine back in the day, which was like the precursor to like Sports Center. And, they've had a lot of great people over the years, people that are like Dan Helly, Lindsay Zarniak, Diana Rossini, who was, there later on, who I, is still one of my good friends. She's at ESPN now, killing it. So it was also not full-time, but I was, hoping that it would turn into something full-time. But it was a job at, like, again, one of the top station here in DC. And so I was working under my boss, Jeff Greenberg, who had been at the station for like 25 years. And it was good. I eventually it was full time. And then Jeff, after 25 years at the station, I think maybe like a year or two into me being there, picked up and left to move actually out west to go to the Pac-12 network, which had just started. So then I was in charge as quickly as that. It was interesting. It's interesting. And it's still like this right now because I'm like a player coach. I'm in charge of the department, but I'm also doing like the day-to-day tasks of, putting in the show rundown, writing, editing, but I'm still a manager. So it's like an interesting dynamic of weighing, especially to like our department right now is 2 people, myself and a photographer, figuring out what the next steps are in COVID world. But, we had it before. We had like a reporter anchor, we had another producer. But it was always interesting because I was the manager, but I was also the worker bee. So it was an interesting dynamic that I still don't know if I've been able to figure out the perfect balance of that. Still a work in progress, I guess, all these years later.
Aren't we all? Literally,
yeah.
Aren't we all? And I've been in those same shoes. Okay, so I have some questions. You gave us a lot there. So
Sorry, I know. I hope I didn't ramble too much.
No, it's good stuff. Like you gave us a lot of stuff in a good way. If you rambled, I'd have been like, okay, we got to stop, cut. No.
We only had to stop for my daughter coming in 10 times.
You said some interesting things. I was producing, but I was learning on the fly, right? And then all of a sudden, like like your boss is gone and you're in charge. Like, where does that confidence come from to be like in there, in the mix, learning how to produce on the fly? And I got on, I had some stressful, like I have anxiety just saying those lines.
Yeah, no, it was, I don't know if we were doing like a pregame show or what it was. And like, I just really had no idea like how to time a show. And it was one of them was like really bad. And I was like, I told you I didn't like know how to do this, but I guess after, a lot of more training and reps and not getting down on myself or anything like that, I was able to forge forward. I always knew that like, I certainly like had the knowledge and the smarts to like do it all. It was just a matter of getting the experience and doing it. But I also, I didn't want to say, no, I don't know how to do this, which I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing.
It's a great thing. I think it's a great thing because what I'm hearing you say is you went in, you were just, this is what you wanted to do. You were just going to learn and you were okay with, I'm sure it beat you up inside a little bit, but you were like, okay, this wasn't good, but I kind of warned you because I don't know.
Exactly. Like it wasn't like I was right. I said, I'm willing to do it and try it, but like they knew that that wasn't the experience that I had, but they were willing to roll with it. And then, as far as once my boss left, I think it was just more of an onus on, okay, like I have to make sure, I'm in charge of like the schedules and just make sure that we're covered with all of our planning and scheduling and just being more focused in that kind of realm of my life and not just focused on the day of stuff. And that's still, again, like something that's difficult for me is I know I need to do this, today for the shows today, but planning out next week, the week ahead, making sure this person has their vacation days, making sure we're covering this, giving a fair coverage to this team, and that team. So balancing like the day of stuff, which I was always so focused on, and then having to open my eyes to some of the bigger picture things of planning out and, what a manager does, like looking ahead and all that kind of stuff. So just finding that balance between the now and, the future and the now.
So when your boss left, you were promoted, correct?
Yeah. Well, it took a while for like that actual like promotion, like in name to kick in.
It's always the case, right? Like he or she, your boss leaves and then it's like, okay, you take over. And then
and then like you're doing all the work anyway, right? And then you're like, I don't want to ask for too much, and I'm sure you hear that, and then it's like I was in my 30s at that point still, but like I don't know, it's just a weird thing. You're like, cool, I'm in charge, and then eventually you're like, wait, I should have a title that goes along with this and a commensurate perhaps upgrade and a little bit of a salary upgrade or things of that nature. So it was difficult too, because like to have the people, and I think all my coworkers respect me and respected me like back then, but to have somebody who had been in charge of the department or in the department, he hadn't been in charge, I don't think for 25 years, but for a long time. And then I'm not him, and that's okay. It was a little bit probably of a different leadership style. Again, it's one that's, I think the one thing that I'm still very much working on that my bosses have always tried to get on me too over these years is just becoming a better manager. The producing thing I eventually got down and things like that, but how to be a manager and work with the different people and know what's good for the department, but also know what's good for the station as a whole. So that's taken a while to kind of figure out. I would rather be in that position than not.
So how long have you been now leading this team?
I'm trying to think about when Jeff left. I'd say it's funny. You always think it's like less time. I'd say it's probably been, because I've been there 9 years now. And so I'd say probably 7 years.
Oh, okay. So you're going to have some juicy advice for us. Okay. So like effectively leading a team is a difficult thing to do. It's not easy. It doesn't come natural to everybody. And even
it didn't to me. It definitely didn't to me.
Yeah. And even people who it does come naturally to, it's still not easy to do. Right. And especially when you're first starting. So now looking back, what advice would you give to women who are just like you? All of a sudden it's like, okay, you're in charge. Run with it.
And I also like, I get very like apologetic, like on things too. And like, I'll like take blame and for things that aren't, and there's certain aspects, like you got to pick your battles, like, and I've, learned that too. But I think my biggest thing is like, I also like when people will put out ideas and I'm like, I know that's not going to happen, but then they don't want to hear, like, then you sound like a Debbie Downer and that you're not like trying to make it happen. And you're not like fighting for the team. And I feel like I've had that where I come off as like I'm not fighting for whatever it is or pursuing something. Like they're like, let's get President Obama. And I'm like, we're not going to get President Obama. But people want to be heard and they want you to know that you are trying to fight for them. So even if you don't think something is going to happen. So it's about, just instead of just kind of poo-pooing something like right away, like, again, not because you're a jerk, just because I'm a realist. Like I know where my efforts are better placed, but people just kind of want to be heard and like make sure that you're at least hearing them out. And then, if whatever it is works or doesn't work, so be it. But at least they feel like they've had their say and you've taken it and listened and thought about it and then gone from there with whatever the decision is, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So advice you'd give is making sure that your team feels like heard.
Feels heard, feels you're supporting them. Even if the end result doesn't end up the way they wanted, at least they've been heard out and feel like you're behind them and taking their ideas and whatever it is, seriously and not just like brushing it off. Mm-hmm. Not to say that I was brushing it off, but, just they want to feel included and supported.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then what else? What else would you do? Or what advice would you give? Or if you had to go back when you first started this and took over in this role, like what would you change as a leader?
I guess also just not taking things so personally. And that's hard, because no one's thinking it's not whatever happens in these instances, usually not a reflection on you. It's just whatever the situation is at your work or whatever the story might be. So especially like sports and news, sometimes like, we have to fight our way in to get more time and things like that and prove why, we should be in the show. And that is every reporter. Every reporter has to have a good story that day. So we're no different. But it's hard sometimes to not take things personally. So I don't know if I'll even, it's sometimes hard to practice what you preach. But I guess that would probably be one other piece of advice is to just not take things so personally and just know that whatever, it's the business and just kind of move on to the next thing and also not harp on things. Cause like, especially like for us, like if I make a mistake in one show by the next, but unless it's some God, I don't even know what, but you're on to the next show by the next day. So I can't like harp on the mistake I made on Monday when I've got another show on Tuesday. It's almost like a player, like in your next game, you're on to the next game. Like you gotta, you went 0 for 4. All right, that's great. Gotta move on to the next one. If I spelled something wrong or a tape didn't air like it was supposed to, even if I was really felt strongly about that story, it stinks, but it's on to the next one. As long as no people were harmed in any, in some way, so it's almost like I said, it's almost like a player in that respect that you just got to move on to the next one. So I guess kind of, not taking things too personally if there's like disagreements at work and also being able to not harp on things and move on to the next, even if a mistake is made.
I think these are really good because if you think about it, right, you just said it, you're in a fast-paced environment. You guys are moving. And so like, it's really hard to do just these 3 that you just gave, especially first-time manager, and first time having a team. It's difficult, but making sure people are heard, right? Even if you think that the idea will never happen.
Right.
And then not taking things personally, which is, you're right. You don't get it.
Really
no one's going to get it right every single time. There are people who do. And I think it usually tends to be men, right? But it's hard to do. But when you practice it and you're intentional about it, it starts to get easier every single time. Right. And then letting go. I love this third one is letting go of mistakes. Just, it's okay.
Even like I have a little, and this is such a little example from the other day, but I wrote in, and again, this wasn't anything that affected anything, but in our John Wall, Russell Westbrook story last night, we had a wonderful segment. Everything was great. We turned it around super quickly. And in the last little bit, it's for people not in like, they just call it the tag. So just kind of something to wrap up the story. And I wrote Bradley Beal was set to speak the following day. And it'd be interesting to hear what he had to say about his Wall leaving and now his new teammate. And I had missed an email 10 minutes earlier that the team had sent out that the press conference actually had been canceled, which wasn't too surprising because it was previously scheduled and they probably didn't want all the questions to be about this new trade. Mm-hmm. And I was kicking myself because I'm like, I wish I had seen that. And like that information at that point was no longer correct. No one at home knew that. A couple people texted me and were like, the press conference is off. And I was like, I know. I said, but I was rushing to put together a minute 30 segment with an interview with the Wizards beat reporter for NBC4 Washington that had taped a half hour earlier, and I didn't see the email. So little thing, and like you could say, like, I'm still today, I'm kind of like, I wish I didn't have that. But again, it was nothing that was terribly wrong that hurt the newscast. I didn't have that most up-to-date information, but I'm on to new shows today, and I have to let that go in the past. Again, nothing aired wrong or no video got messed up, but it's just little things like that you're just like, man, I wish that I had gotten that right, but I need to move on to the next one.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think what you're saying is you you felt the sting. You were like, yeah, you're not ignoring it. You're like, I messed up. I wish that, I got that right. You probably thought like for a couple of seconds, like, okay, maybe next time this is how I can get it right. Maybe I'll whatever, like I'm not in your world, but maybe you thought about that. And then you got to move on.
Right.
It's on to the next thing. Because if you sit and unpack and live in that mistake, like you can't do your job well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm with you on the little things because oh my goodness, I'm the worst when it comes to grammar. It's just, it is what it is. And I wish I listened to my parents when I was younger and paid attention and all.
I know my parents are both teachers. So like, I mean, I should probably have perfect grammar, but that ain't true. So.
I am right there with you. So I sent out an email and, to my email list, and I read it like 5 times. My assistant read it 5 times. And then I'm sitting there, and of course 5 days go by, and then it goes out, and I'm like, oh, that's supposed to be N-O, not K-N-O-W. I'm like, oh, that's so embarrassing. But you know what I mean?
Like autocorrect, and with autocorrect, and like, it's just, you're just like, that's not what I meant to say. Crap.
You know what? I don't. What if somebody, like, it is what it is. Like,
right. If somebody's going to ding me for that.
Right. Like it's fine, but you have to like, just move on. Like we set up some more, cause it was a couple in a row, and I was like, what is wrong with me? But then if you stay there and live there and be mad at yourself for these little mistakes,
especially when there's so much going on, and not to like make excuses, but just, it is what it is. Like it's reality. And so, again, like my daughter is coming here like 8,000 times, and I'm like, oh, like gotta stay focused. Like, so.
Yes. And you did a really good job at that.
Thanks. She just came in to get that last time. I was like, I gave her like a pretty mean look. So she went upstairs with her pirate booty. So.
Oh my God. Fantastic. Hey, Jahaan here. I hope you're enjoying the interview. I'm sure you are thinking about your own career right now and how you can pull out in front of the pack to take your career to the next level. For 18 years, supporting women in sports has been my favorite part of my career, and I would love to support you. Whether it's joining my free Game of Her Own community or one of my one-on-one coaching programs, I am here for you. Send me a message at jblake@jahaanblake.com or DM me on Instagram at jahaanblake, and let's schedule a time to have a free session. I cannot wait to hear from you. All right, let's get back to why you're here. Okay, so speaking of family, how are you making all of this work? I mean, now we have COVID in the mix, right? Like before COVID, it was already hard, but like now you have COVID in the mix, and you have a family, you're in this fast-paced environment, you're in this like just it's a lot. Like, how are you making it work?
I don't know. We just are, I guess, right? Like you're just forced into it. And then like so many situations, and then you know what you can do once you're in it. And so my daughter is in first grade. She's, virtually learning 5 days a week. And so, she's been doing a pretty good job with that. The breaks always seem to coincide with when I have meetings and interviews and such. And so my son's back at preschool. So, but yeah, no, it's hard because you always, you want to give 100% to your work and to your family. And especially, without COVID, that's even hard. And then with COVID, I don't know, 75, you could do 75% to both. That's probably in line with what most people are at right now. I just, as long as I can still, get my work done, it's good. Like my husband being in the industry probably, helps too. Again, it just because it's fresh on my mind, like last, with John Wall and Bradley Beal, or not Bradley Beal, Russell Westbrook, that trade broke at, I don't know, it was like 7 something maybe. It was a little after 7. So at least we had eaten dinner. That was exciting. But I knew I had to get to work right away. Now I had worked a full shift, and because of our staffing situation right now, I'm also, and that's part of this too, like I've been having, let things go for the 11 o'clock show, let some of the news folks that aren't necessarily sports producers, but there's people that have it, that they know sports or follow sports that can cut a video and edit a script for something on a given night, I have to like let that go because I can't work 14, 15-hour days all the time. But like in these certain instances, you have to. So my husband, he used to be night side. So I was the one, he would work like 3 to 11. So I did bath time and bedtime by myself every night because I was working more like 10 to 7 at that point. And most sports people do work like in local, work the evening shift. I've been able to kind of, as running the department, and when I did have the other producer, been able to work more day side and focus on the afternoon shows. Then my other producer would focus on the 11 o'clock show. So I could leave at like 7 o'clock. I mean, if it was like playoffs or Sunday nights, I worked in the evening because we always had a Sunday evening show as well. So my husband, did bath, bed, and because he knew that I needed to be working on this big story, writing, editing, setting up an interview. So that's, I guess, how I've been, able to work. Certainly like that we've been able to make it work where I know certain times are high times for him. He knows certain times are high times for me, or even unexpectedly, but I was able to kind of hop here on my computer, do all that. And he took care of the rest.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. So I hear it's partnership between you two, and a lot of patience as well.
It's funny. I also literally tweeted yesterday, is it weird that I honked at somebody in the drive-thru twice? So my patience is not great, but as a parent and, as a working parent, I think it's probably gotten better, but, like being from like a Jersey girl, that's just, we have a certain, like even in Maryland down here, it's certainly things are a little slower. And I'm like, why, let's get going. I still have that New York, New Jersey attitude. But yeah, I've, certainly with the kids, I think the patience has to get better. I mean, yeah, you have your blow ups and everything, but it's the nature of the beast. Like you just, you got to be a little more patient with things. But yeah, I did honk at somebody in the drive-thru yesterday twice.
I mean, it is what it is.
I don't know what planet she was on. She was taking forever to order. Then she took forever at the pay thing. She wasn't moving up. I was at McDonald's drive-thru because that's also part of this, work life in Bell, where you're at McDonald's when you have several days a week when you have kids. And
so what I hear you saying is you just do whatever it takes.
Exactly.
You're so patient with your daughter before, but you know what? Sometimes you have to take it out on other people, and maybe it was that woman in the drive-thru. It
was her fault anyway. It was totally her fault. She needed to get moving. I don't know what she was ordering and why it was taking so long.
That's really funny. Hopefully you don't run into her again.
No, maybe it was the McRib threw her off. It didn't come out this week. Maybe she was deciding whether she wanted to dabble in the McRib pool or something. I don't know.
I don't even want to know about the McRib. I can't.
I know. I have some friends that I have this one friend who's really into it, and I'm like,
No, not in this house. I think my husband might like it. Anyway, as we digress and somehow start to talk about McRib. So tell me something. I think this is really exciting about you. Tell me how many Emmys you have won.
So I have 3 Emmys. One is for MLB Network. So that's a national sports Emmy for MLB Tonight. Basically everybody who was part of the crew behind the scenes, in front of the camera, who contributed to that show won an Emmy. When it won, we all got our own, we were part of that group. And then I have 2 local ones, most recently for the Nats winning the World Series, our parade coverage that we had on NBC4 as being part of that group. And then the night the Caps won the Stanley Cup back in 2018, we won for that night as well. So that was, that's a crazy night. You're in the control room at the station, and you have reporters in all different locations. The Caps was cool. We had Lindsay Zarniak, who used to work at Channel 4 in the sports department for a long time. And she's been at ESPN. Now she's doing Fox Sports. She's on some of the NASCAR coverage and NFL broadcasts. She's kind of come back in instances to, contribute to our coverage because people just still fondly remember her. And she, was always, she fondly remembers us. So our sports anchor, Sherry, actually was getting married at the time. So we needed some extra help. And so Lindsay was in Vegas where the Caps were when they won. And then we had reporters back downtown, scattered throughout the city for the celebrations and things like that. So, we had the interviews with the players and their families and all that, those wonderful moments. Our cameraman, Chris, is a hockey player, and he was on his skates with his camera. So shout out to Chris, because he is always doing these like creative ways to shoot stories and things. But he was on skates with his camera with Lindsay so they could go around and get all those interviews. And then, we had the news reporters back in DC, with fans in the streets, at the bars, when you could do such things. And it was just a great night. And like we were, coordinating it in the control room of all the different shots, going all the different reporters and things like that. So we won. They have like a little ceremony every year. So we won for the Caps and we won for the Nats parade. And as I was telling you earlier, I thought what was really cool was that they actually, for the Caps, won at the Emmy ceremony. As we were walking up, they said, "Heather, you speak, you accept the award," which I did not know I was doing. I thought it was going to be one of the news director or assistant news director higher ups. So that was really neat that they, knowing that was kind of my thing, my realm, like they, I was the one to speak, and obviously thanked, all the folks in front of the camera behind the scenes. There's a lot of folks behind the scenes that make this stuff happen. So it was pretty neat. And my husband was there, so it was cool. So, and he's won a few too.
Oh, so you have a lot in your house. I love it.
We're 3-3 now. So we're all square right now.
So is your Christmas picture like you, the 2 kids, husband, and 6 Emmys?
I haven't thought of that, but we might have to take them out. That's a pretty good idea. And like right now with COVID, you got to just smile, give yourself a reason to smile. So yeah, no, that's not a bad idea. I might have to rethink our Christmas card.
Yes. Okay. Let me know if you need my address. Okay. So I think it's incredible that you have 3 Emmys. Talk to me a little bit what it's like in your experience, right? Because I grew up professionally and worked 15 years in a front office settings, right? For 3 different teams. You, on the other hand, have grown up professionally and now are running sports in a newsroom, right? I don't know if I'm saying.
Yeah. No, that's essentially it. Yeah.
So what is it like? What's your experience been working or is it even a male dominated industry?
It's funny because obviously like I get that question a lot, and I'll speak on like panels at like University of Maryland and things of that nature. And I guess I'm lucky. Like I've and I see a lot of the trolls out there when women are talking about sports, and certainly Twitter, just gives people their keyboard courage. Even with the Sarah Fuller, with the Vanderbilt kicker, and to see how not far so many people have come in all their stereotypes and all their negative, comments about women and like they're like from, 100 years ago. But, I think most people have been accepting of me in a male dominated industry. One of my things that I always kind of tell some of the college students, especially the women, is you just have to study even harder and know your stuff even more, because if you make a mistake, the first thing that a lot of men will think, or even other women for that matter, is it's because you're a woman, not because you just made a simple mistake or you read a fact wrong or whatever the case is. It's because you're a woman. So it's just being that much, more prepared, doing extra research, whatever it is, to make sure that you can speak comfortably on a topic, because that's definitely, I think, the first thing that a lot of people come for women in sports. If a mistake is made, is that she's a woman and not just maybe it was a simple mistake or something like that. Yeah,
you nailed it. Because sometimes you're in your own bubble and you see the same, you follow a lot of women in sports and, whatever on social media or however you follow them. And then you start to think change is happening. And then all of a sudden, a woman breaks through and does something in sports, and then she has a mistake. And boy, oh boy.
Even if she doesn't, like you said, with the Sarah Fuller thing, like people were, yes. Cookies or cooking or, and you're just like, what are you talking about? Like, but right. The minute you think that a lot of, headway's been made, and it is, because just look at how many, you've got your front, the front office side too. And then I look at my media side of, reporters and anchors. And again, it's not just the sideline reporters anymore. It's women like Doris Burke, like as a play-by-play or as a color commentator and play-by-play, Beth Mowins, like people like that it's interesting to see how that's also evolved, that again, the woman's place isn't just the sideline. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Like the sideline provides a lot of wonderful information, but you don't just have to be on the sideline. You too can be in the booth.
Sure. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I like what you said about just making sure you do your homework and you're prepared. But I think the key thing that you said there is to use your voice. Just prepare, but use your voice. And what's interesting is even if you were in a room full of women, you should do the same thing. Right. Like
if you know your stuff and you want to be heard and you have valid points and good ideas, use them, be heard. Whether that's in a room full of women or a room full of men in a press conference. But I know that a lot of, like women that I talked to over the years, like do notice certainly like if they're covering a press conference or whatever it may be, and they're looking around and they're like, I'm the only woman, or I'm the only African-American woman, or, so it's still, very much there, the domination of one, male to female. But I do think that a lot of headway has been made.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that we all have to keep on showing up.
Yes.
I think that's the key there. A big topic that comes up a lot with women in sports is, I'm sure this is everywhere, but women in sports, that's my world, is networking. And I find a lot of people are like shy and intimidated by the whole entire process, where I'm an introvert. I love it. I love networking. And even though I am a little on the quiet side. So tell us like how that has worked well for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think like one of like the best things that I've been able to accomplish over these years is like the relationships that I've maintained with PR people, people at colleges and universities. And we've constantly said this to my bosses, like, we're not just going to always be on every press conference because like we want to show our face, but you have to make sure that you're seen, it's another thing, like you're seen, you're heard, because if there's some big event or something with the team, they're going to think, oh, I saw, Channel 4 there. I saw Heather there. I saw Chris there, Chris, our cameraman. And if we're not there and you're not present, they're not going to maybe go out of their way to help you with that one-on-one interview that you're asking for, that you just don't come out of the blue when the playoffs come around. Mm. So I think also just keeping those relationships with a lot of the people, and even if it's not in season, just checking in with them. Hey, blank, how you doing? Just seeing what's up. Goes a long way. And some of these folks, and there's a lot of turnover too. Certainly, I think maybe at whether it's professional teams or college level, some groups, you got PR people that have been there for 20 years. Other places, there are times they're replacing them every few years. So I think, we've done a pretty good job of maintaining those relationships with these colleges, with these professional teams, doing our part so that, again, it's making them feel like their team is seen and heard and covered, even if they may not be doing that well. We might not go to the practice all the time, and we might not be on every Zoom, but making the effort to know that we're there to cover their team. The one thing pertaining to women in sports that's interesting, and certainly my reporters have had this more than myself, as I'm out in the field sometimes, but they're out a little bit more, is that when you get like a phone number or an email, because those are the contacts that you need with the teams if you're trying to get, inside information, sources, but you have to be careful when you're a woman, because if you're getting a player's number or their email or some kind of contact information, there's always the worry or chance that it could come off. And even if it's not the case, but just the optics of, are you trying to get with that player, or, are you trying to do your job professionally, or why are you trying to get that guy's number? It's just the optics. So it's a very slippery slope for a lot of the female reporters, because they're just trying to get their sources. They're just trying to get their stories. But to somebody on the outside who maybe has these preconceived notions of women in sports, they're immediately going to go to the, oh, she's, trying to date him, or she's trying to whatever it is. So that is always an interesting slippery slope, where as if those men reporters can get the contact information and never have to think about what that looks like.
What advice would you give women in that situation?
Just keep it professional. I mean, do what you need to do as if you were a man, woman, whatever it is, and continue to, get your sources how you do. And I have friends that have dealt with this, and luckily they've been pretty good about also brushing it off and not taking it too seriously. My one friend who's at ESPN constantly has people with the trolls of how she gets her sources and how she gets her information. But I know she's a good reporter. She's worked these relationships professionally over the years. So yeah, I mean, I guess my advice would just be, continue to do what you do. And if you're ever thinking something might look a little fishy, maybe take a second and think how you're going to approach that. There is a reality that the women just have to think about those things. It's not real to just say, even though I'm saying to do what you do, it's not realistic to just pretend that those questions don't exist. So how can you just make sure you're doing your job and presenting it in the right way, and it is best to avoid some of the nonsense that might come along with it.
Yeah. Yes, I think that's great advice. Okay, this has been amazing. You've given us some great advice and loved hearing your journey. My next question for you is, are you ready for the rapid fire questions?
I love rapid fire. I mean, actually, I don't know if I've done it. I don't know. I like trivia. I like, I don't know, the game shows. So sure, like, let's do it.
All right, here we go. So tell us, what is your favorite sports moment?
Favorite sports moment is Maryland winning the national title in 2002, Maryland basketball.
Ooh, okay.
I was in college, and that was really cool.
Oh, that must have been so fun.
It was awesome.
What is something people always get wrong about you?
I guess, I don't know, like thinking that, I don't know why I thought of this, and like thinking that like I grew up a tomboy or things like of that nature, like because I like sports. But I didn't. I liked Barbies. I was eclectic in my, likes.
I like that one. Okay. What is one food you wouldn't want to give up?
I guess, just because I eat it all. I guess pizza, just because like with kids, I eat it so much that like, I don't think I'd be able to give that up. I mean, I like pizza too, but yep. I just eat it so much. I don't think that there'd be anything to fill that void.
Yep. Me too. Are you a morning or night person?
Night.
Favorite holiday?
Christmas, though I'm Jewish, so I should throw in Hanukkah, but we always grew up liking, we celebrated with my mom's friend up the street in Staten Island, and I have like more memories of like Christmas, like in her big Italian family. So I know, I guess I'll say Christmas. And I mean, we celebrate it now. My husband's great, so we're some kind of melded family, but Christmas is king.
It's perfect.
Hanukkah shout out Hanukkah too.
What job would you absolutely be horrible at?
Chef.
Oh, okay.
I don't cook.
Yep, I'm starting to get that pizza, McDonough. Yep, got it. Right. What's your favorite app? My favorite app? I don't use a lot of apps. I don't even know where my phone is right now. That's a good thing.
I don't know. I get it's Instagram. Can I choose that one?
You sure can. Who is your biggest inspiration in life?
Good question. I guess I'd say my mom, as far as like how to like be a good person and like, be a good friend with people, so I guess I'd say my mom.
Good answer. I'm sure she'd like that. As a child, what did you wish to become when you grew up?
What did I want to be? I think I wanted to be some kind of like reporter or, I think it was the sports. And also I watched a lot of Ninja Turtles and April O'Neil. Like, so I have these weird like reasons why I became like, it was sports with the Saved by the Bell inside stuff thing. And then Ninja Turtles and April O'Neil. So I think I kind of, I always wanted to do some form of what I'm doing right now.
Of all the things I thought we'd talk about today, Ninja Turtles was not one of them. All right, last one. Finish this sentence. The future of women working in sports is?
The future of women working in sports is bright and a continued climb. Kind of like we've said, I think there's so many more opportunities now. There's so many more women represented and in the industry and helping out one another. But as you see with so many things in like society and life now, like just when you think you've made a lot of headway, there's a lot of naysayers and negative people out there with their preconceived old notions. So I do think it's bright, but I also think that there's still a lot of work to be done. And I don't know if it's ever going to not be that way, but I have a good feeling about the direction that it's heading.
I like that one. Good answer. All right. If someone wanted to get in touch with you, how could they go about doing that?
Yeah, so they can, on Twitter, I'm at Heather McD4. And then my email is heather.mcdonough@nbcuni.com, MCDONOUGH. But yeah, Twitter is probably, I guess, the best way. I'm at Heather McD4.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This was so much fun.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it. I had a really good time chatting, and thanks for having me on.
So what did you think of this episode? Do you know another woman who works or is aspiring to work in sports? Would you do me a favor and share this with them? It would mean so much if together we could support and inspire other women on their journey. And let's stay connected. I love meeting and talking to new people. Follow me on Instagram at Jahaan Blake and join the free Game of Her Own community by visiting jahaanblake.com. I can't wait to meet you.